Hello, my message today is about dealing with depression. Dealing with depression. My daughter, who is a nurse practitioner in another state, told me she works in the she has her own practice in the field of psychological difficulties, and that is her training. And she said this COVID isolation, the time of the quarantine, even though it's meant to save lives and to keep from the spreading of a deadly virus, it has also issued in an escalation of the number of cases of persons suffering from depression and anxiety and fear. We all now and then have moments of depression. I know I do. There have been times I've fallen into some very dark holes of depression. We all have coping mechanisms. The problem that she's facing is that many of her patients are persons that are chemically dependent in some ways and have been helped, but as their depression has escalated and their anxiety and fear, they have often turned to more harmful ways of trying to deal with it. My way is to deal with humor, but even that, doesn't always work all the time. Who would have known that a figure that was so witty and so intelligent and so funny as Robin Williams also wrestled with a dark inner feeling of inadequacy and meaninglessness, that it even drove him to take his own life, which God forbid. I hope no one will do that. Depression is a common human experience. And some years ago, a couple of decades ago, there was a major Christian leader in America that said, "Oh, Christians don't have depression. We have Jesus, we have the Holy Spirit, we have the promises of God. You just sort of sail through life, and you should never get down. You're somehow failing as a Christian if you do." That's wrong. I don't agree with that at all. It's not true to my experience as a dedicated Christian. It's not true to the Christian experience in the world or to the tradition of the church, which has acknowledged these dark nights of the soul. As John of the Cross wrote several centuries ago, the dark night of the soul, when it just seems that you're not getting through and you feel like you're in darkness. What is depression like? It's this loss of energy. It's feeling listless. Feeling that life has just overwhelmed you. You feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Your energy is depleted. Sometimes our self-esteem is called into question. Am I worth anything? We feel that we can't do anything, that we just don't have the energy to get up and do it. And even little tasks like take out the trash or clean up the dishes and wash them and put them away, or fold the clothes or cut your toenails or fingernails just begins to seem like such a big issue. And you just don't want to do anything but just lay in bed or just watch TV and zone out. Now, these are signs of depression. Now, some depression, I'm not an expert on this, but I think this would be fairly common knowledge, is circumstantial. I mean, things, you're going hard and all of a sudden you're depleted of energy, you're burned out. Circumstances, things that are going around you, bad news all around you, and it just gets to you. There's another kind that I think is a medical condition that some people suffer from, bipolar, and bipolar they're just chemically wired. It's nothing that they can do to help this attitudinally. Sometimes they're up and sometimes they're down. I think that was something that Robin Williams faced, and that I would be quick to recommend that for depression you can consult professionals who are trained in that, and also the medical profession that can help with that. But to say that Christians do not experience this, we experience the same thing other people in the world experience. Of course, we share a common humanity, but it's not even true to the Bible. The Bible is full of stories of great people of God who have agonized with depression. I think of the story of Elijah, that he was in a cave and felt that his life was worthless. He just wanted God to take his life because he felt he was such a failure and he couldn't turn Israel around, and he had a deep experience of God through his depression. Or the book of Jeremiah, and if Jeremiah wrote Lamentations, these are witnesses of a great servant of the Lord that just agonized inside and felt so depleted and so cast down and so inadequate. Jonah, that prophet, the most successful prophet of the Bible, according to the story, he preached and everyone repented, and he was sad about it, and he was mourning on the mountainside. And felt that his life was worthless, Jonah. And one of the most interesting characters of the Bible is David, that experienced heights of joy and heights of celebration and could write wonderful poems and hymns out of his experience of being so up. But he also had the experience of the pit that he wrote about many times, where he was sad and threatened and felt that his life was overwhelmed and that he was in a miry place and a dark place and he couldn't get out of it, and feeling completely helpless. The devotion this morning in the upper room was from Psalm 143, and I like to read it to you from the New Living Bible. I just thought chapter 43, this is a lament psalm, a psalm of lament. 1/3 of the psalms, by the way, they were not all written by David, but 1/3 of the psalms are laments, which are complaints, pouring out their pain to God in a prayer. And it was, "Hear my prayer, O Lord, and listen to my plea. Answer me, because you are faithful and righteous." And then he goes on to say, "Come quickly," in verse 7, "Come quickly, Lord, and answer me, for my depression deepens. Don't turn away from me, or I will die." I like the way that's put into modern English. My depression deepens. Sometimes we just feel like we're in a hole and we can't get out. How do we cope with that? How do we cope with that? Well, Psalm 142 and Psalm 143, I believe, have a common bond. They're both Psalms of David, but the prescript to Psalm 142 says, a Psalm of David when he was in a cave. Now, that's true also of Psalm 57, that the little prescript before it, you read the actual psalm, says this was a Psalm of David when he was running from Saul and was hiding in a cave. And that comes from the book of 1 Samuel, where he was running from Saul and was even hiding in a cave. His life was under threat. And we kind of get an insight through these Psalms into how despairing that great man of God, David, was. What do you do? How do you cope with depression? Well, some of the clues are here. In verse 5 of Psalm 143, it says, "I remember the days long past. I meditate on all your deeds. I contemplate your handiwork. I stretch out my hands to you. My whole being is like dry dirt thirsting for you." One of the things that we can do during depression, times of depression, is to realize that we haven't always been that way. Remember, there's a backward look. Look to the past. Remember Jesus saying, "Remember me," as he broke the bread. Do this in remembrance of me. Because we begin to call on the power of the past to bear on the present. We do that every time we take the Lord's Supper. We're remembering, is not just in our mind, but we're refocusing what was central. So he says, "I remember the days long past." You have not always been in this condition if you were depressed. There was a time there was joy. There was a time there was peace. There was a time that things were better. Yes, things may be stacking up right now and seem very bad, but the truth is we can remember the past, and that helps us, that backward look, to look forward, to look to the future. Psalm 13 is a wonderful psalm that is also a psalm of lament that's pouring out one's soul. I would recommend that you read Psalm 113 because it's almost accusing God. "How long will you forget me, Lord? Forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long will I be left to my own wits and agony filling my heart daily? How long will my enemy keep defeating me?" So looking at that circumstance of the enemy and all that was going on in Psalm 13, but before it gets to the end of the psalm, the last couple of verses, will say, yes, I will sing to the Lord because he has been good to me. So there's a backward look. Remember, better times, God's blessing in the past that really hasn't gone away. But we also look to the future. Yet I will. Job said, I will stand on the earth and still see my Redeemer while I'm alive. There is that look to the future, which dispels despair. Despair is to think the future is only dark, but hope is faith in its future orientation. It says, the God who has acted in the past will again act. I will not always be in this situation. We will look to the back and we'll look to the future, look forward, and that will help us to look up. As the psalmist that wrote Psalm 143 was able to say, make me live again, Lord, verse 11, for your name's sake. Bring me out of distress because of your righteousness. This psalmist had a backwards look to remember the days past, but also a forward look. It will yet change, and God will be there again, the God that never left us. The sun may have gone behind the cloud, but the sun hasn't gone away, and it will beam again, and that helps us to look upward. One thing about looking upward, to look towards God, is that Jesus is there for us. It says he ever lives as a great high priest to make intercession for us according to the will of God. You may say, I don't even know how to pray as I ought. I do not know how to pray. I don't even know how to put into words. I'm so confused. But God is not confused. God is praying for you. The Holy Spirit, it says, is praying for you, and Jesus is interceding for us. That's our view of God. That's how we understand that God is with us even through those dark moments. Don't give up. I heard a preacher say, when you get to the end of your rope, tie a knot and hang on. God bless.